So my ex actually started the Instagram for me and was posting pictures of bodybuilding. I was teaching high school at the time.
Sure.
It was a private account. Someone found it, and I was fired.
Surprise.
Yes.
Really?
I didn't want it to be a typical model because I didn't feel like a typical model. I had never been told I was pretty my whole life. So I still didn't embody that girl. But if you don't have your purpose, like what is the point of fitting in size 2 jeans? Because people are longing for validation.
Yes.
They want to be heard. They want to be seen. And when your parents don't see and hear you, you seek it elsewhere.
Influencer Insight shares the battles, stories, successes of models, influencers, and entrepreneurs as they find the balance of being influential leaders today while creating long-lasting impact.
Hello, everybody. This is Ben with the Influencer Insights podcast. And tonight I have Wendy Myers joining me from Dallas, Oregon, which she tells me is actually a place because she said Dallas, but very cool that Wendy could join us. She's a coach, she's a mom of daughters, and she's been a kindergarten teacher, grade 3 all the way through. So
kindergarten and high school, yeah.
And high school, sorry. And so she's here to share her journey becoming a model and getting into her coaching program in the business that she started. So we're really glad to have you on, Wendy. Thank you so much for joining us today. So
no, I appreciate it so much, Ben. Really do. Thank you.
So we were chatting a little bit. You've got 3 daughters. You're living in Dallas, Oregon. Do you want to share a few more details about you and where you're from and what you do? And
let's see. Well, I've moved a lot.
Cool.
I have moved 17 times. My ex, we are best friends now. In fact, he is my main photographer. So
Very cool.
Kind of did it the way that you'd hope things would happen, where you stay together for the girls because you love those girls and you want them to be set up for life. And, we're best friends, but we just realized that we're not for each other.
Sure.
We're going different directions. And so it was time to just be like, you know what? I love you enough to let you go and go do your thing. So, cool. Yeah.
That's incredible that you guys could still work together on top of it. I know people that are split up.
Actually, if we get into that, I'll tell you why it actually works very well, because models can't trust photographers very much. So
no kidding.
Yeah, especially in the digital age. So the fact that I have an absolutely trustworthy photographer is,
that's hard to beat. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, and you guys have if you guys go check out Wendy's Instagram or Facebook or whatever, like they put together some pretty amazing work too. So
thank you.
It's worked well. So good. So when did you, like, being a school teacher, moving to modeling, being a mom, like how did that transition kind of inspire?
Yeah, my story is kind of a funny one. So what you don't know is that my ex was a pastor. So I was a pastor's wife.
On top of it. And you said you homeschooled your kids. Checked all the boxes.
Yes. Yeah, pastor's wife turns model. Yeah, it's a fun, but you know what? It really is a story of a lot of redemption and a lot of discovering yourself, as well as a lot of just being open to the fact that we all change.
Yes.
We all have a journey, and we're on that journey. And if we embrace that journey, it's truly remarkable. And it's what I keep telling my clients. It's all over my my posts. Truly, life is an adventure, and we're meant to embark upon it because it's here for us.
Yes.
It's not doing things to us; it's allowing things for us. And I came from an abusive background, and I did not know that for most of my life, because we don't talk about psychological and emotional and religious abuse in the world. Yeah. So I remember writing things down like, at least I'm not being hit, and it wasn't until I was about 44 where I was sitting in a doctor's office, thankfully a naturopath doctor, and we were talking about things and blood work, and very long story short, 4 weeks went by, I kicked my family out for reasons, and all of a sudden my blood work was different. And then we started talking because I didn't know what I had changed because I hadn't. And she asked some questions, and she was very good at listening. And she sat there and she's like, you've been abused your whole life. And, that doesn't hit you really. And at 40 some years old, you've raised your kids and you've always just thought, wow, this is life. I'm surviving. I've always had hope. I've always had tenacity. I've always just pushed through things, but this is really interesting. So it didn't, again, hit home very much until next week with coworkers, and we were talking at the winery, and wine allows people to talk a little bit more.
Opens them up. Yeah.
And so we were going over things, and I was sharing things, and she about 20 minutes later, this one of my coworkers looks at me and she goes, Wendy, I've been physically abused for 3 years.
Wow.
And I would go through what I've been through before I went through what you've been through. And I think that's what finally dawned on me, where I was like, okay, this is real. Like you all, I think those of us who have been abused, not physically, and I did have a little sexual abuse growing up, but I didn't really acknowledge that at that point. That was buried. So I think we tend to say it's not as big, or it's not as prevalent, or it's not doing the damage that physical abuse is doing. So when she said that to me, I kind of woke up, and that's what changed my life. So I was a homeschooler, married to a pastor who was actually a chaplain at the federal prison at that time.
Okay.
And my life kind of my life sort of collapsed. And I'm just like, I feel like I've been living a lie,
Wow.
But then at the same time, other things totally made sense. Like I would raise my girls, and there were times when I would do things and they'd say something, and like a memory would come in, and I'd be like, why would a parent ever do that to their kid? And I would kind of push it off and be like, well, I'll never do that to my kid,
Yeah.
And it was just things like that culminated, that started coming up in my life, like how my mom treated me, how my brothers treated me, what they said, things they did, how I felt. And I was like, oh my gosh, it makes sense now. It's not my fault. And I think a big thing in humanity today, a big thing that I try and teach my clients, and more importantly, show them, is validation.
Yes.
If we could just, the reason social media is what it is today, with so many people doing what they're doing, and people thinking, why are they doing this? This is ridiculous. It's because people are longing for validation.
Yes.
They want to be heard. They want to be seen. And when your parents don't see and hear you, you seek it elsewhere. When your spouse doesn't see and hear you, you seek it elsewhere. Yeah. So it was sort of just that validation that abuse that happened to me was valid, and I needed to then deal with it. So we sort of slowly dealt with it. I had already kicked my family out at that time, and I realized that my ex was sort of part of that. And his story is a little bit different story, but interwoven. I'll try and quickly explain it. He has Asperger's, so there's a lot of reasons why he treated me the way he did that he did not understand. And so as soon as I understood that, my entire world just opened up, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's not my fault.
Yeah.
And I could then love him in a way that was such a friendship. And that's how we became amazing friends, because it was years of marriage that were very lonely, very struggling, and I just loyally stayed because of religion, because of kids, because of whatever. But now I'm so grateful that I stayed, because I stayed long enough to see him for who he is. And he needed that validation. Yes. He needed me to see him for who he was.
Right.
And he's an amazing man, and he has many skills and talents. We're just not meant to be together. So that whole process allowed us to kind of go through that, which was amazing. And in that process, I was a teacher, and I was homeschooling at the time, but also substitute teaching at the high school.
Oh.
And I decided I was going to bodybuild, because it's something I always wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I was in the generation of, if you bodybuild, you're going to be bulky.
Yeah.
It's going to look terrible, so don't do it, right? Do I like to? Don't answer that.
I know the expression, you don't look that way, but you're good, yeah.
So I decided, I'm like, this is what I'm doing, and you can stand behind me or you can get out. That was kind of my ultimatum. And to my absolute surprise, he's like, I'm going to support you in this. And it was amazing. And so I'd always been an athlete. And the reason I had so basically I was working at a winery at the time, and people were like, oh, do you compete? And I'm like, compete? What's that? So I discovered what that was. And 3 months later, I stepped on stage and won my first all-around. I had just signed up for a gym. So a thing I like to tell people is the body that I won my first show with was built on consistency at home. I never had a gym membership until after that first show. So that was 100% built while I was homeschooling my girls, 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there, making my own routine. You do not need fancy schmancy machines and a gym membership to build your body. You just don't. You need discipline and hard work. So that was very cool. And after that show, somebody was like, oh, you should probably start an Instagram. And at that point, I had no idea. I'm not a technology person, so I had no idea.
Social media is stupid. Yeah.
So my ex actually started the Instagram for me and was posting pictures of bodybuilding. And I was teaching high school at the time.
Sure.
It was a private account.
Okay.
But someone found it, and I was fired.
Surprise.
Yes.
Really?
So I was fired. And that was kind of devastating, but great. Devastating because I was making a huge impact with the high schoolers at that time.
Right.
Because I was such an athlete and I had been an athlete my whole life. I could look out at a gym of high schoolers and I could be like, you need to do that sport. You need to do that sport. And I would pull them in and talk to them and be like, have you ever tried this sport? Would you like to try it? I can help. And these kids were loving it. They were like, oh my gosh, I found somebody, an adult who's paying attention to me, right?
That's
and my skills. And it was amazing. So that was devastating to me. But at the same time, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me because I had to not rely on my teaching background because my girls were getting to the point where I was like, what am I going to do when I'm done homeschooling? And I didn't really know. I had just been a teacher, whether it was teaching in the, community or teaching my own kids. But going back to teaching showed me I really didn't want to do that anymore. It wasn't teaching anymore. Any teachers on here, they know exactly what I was going to say. It's not teaching. Yeah. And so I was really happy to all of a sudden be like, what am I going to do? Right. So I went and got my personal training license and then COVID hit. So of course the gym's closed. So I went and got my nutrition license. Yes. Okay. Which was another amazing thing because the thing is during COVID, everybody gets onto fitness influencers and TikTok. Yeah. Don't even get me started with that crap. And they watch a 25-year-old girl who's never gone through anything and has a big butt tell people that doing band exercises will get you a big butt. It won't. And I was just like, you know what? If people are going to go to TikTok for their workouts, they need to at least come to a professional to get a nutrition, right? That's right. So that was my goals. I was like, I'm going to work and do nutrition. So I got my nutrition degree. Good for you. And then during that process of certification, I was stepping on stage for I've stepped on stage 9 times. And in there, after like show 2 or 3, somebody was like, you really need to get some professional skills for stage. You have to have some sass. You do. Yes. So I was like, okay, I'm a tomboy. I'm not I can walk in heels, but I'm not, that person. So I went to a modeling clinic, and the people were just like, oh, you're kind of a natural. You might want to, try this out. So I did. And that picture, I should have sent it to you. It was a picture taken on a cell phone on a train in a leather jacket. And it sort of went kind of viral. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is fun. And at the time, because of my background of abuse and having a marriage that wasn't really a marriage, I didn't know that I was pretty. I didn't know that I had anything to offer the world as far as modeling goes in any form of the word. And so starting that, he kind of looked at me, and that was when we both sort of embraced healing each other. He's like, I want you to know that you are beautiful. I want you to see this. So I'm going to help you. Wow. Yeah. Wow. I know. I tell this story and people are like, that's your ex? Why, and it's, I wish this is totally off topic, but at the same time, so many people are struggling with this. I wish that people would realize that you fell in love for a reason, right? And just because you're falling out of love, which I hate that word, because I think the falling out of love comes way after the fact. Right. I think what happens is people go different directions. And we should be allowed to go different directions. Our journeys in this world are meant to be our journeys. Sure. And we don't get to keep everybody, just like we don't get to keep our kids, just like my 21-year-old's going to Germany. I don't get to keep her. I would love to, but I don't get to. Yeah. So I think that if people could see that their spouses or significant others have a journey, and it might include them or not, right, they would be able to leave each other because they love each other. And then they would be able to part ways on good terms. Instead, we wait until we get angry and hate each other, right? And then we're like, oh, now I'm going to leave you. And so the parking is horrible. The kids don't get taken care of. And I've met, because of my journey of now dating and telling this story, people like, wow, I know another person that's sort of like that. And so it's starting for people to start to see that we don't have to stay together for life. Because honestly, he will be in my life forever. I mean, one of my prerequisites of anybody I date is you better get along with my ex because he's going to be in the picture. Going to be there, yeah. I'm like, yeah, but there's no baggage, we like each other. So I think the world and kids would be such a better place if, you were there for each other and then realized maybe this is where it ends. you know, maybe this is where we go our different paths. So anyway, so that was our healing path, and we worked together, and I knew nothing about modeling. He knew nothing about photography whatsoever. In fact, when the little girls were little, I was the photographer.
Oh.
And I remember asking him to take pictures, and he'd be like, "No, why do you need pictures?"
Yeah. How do I do that? Yeah.
So now all of a sudden, all we have is a cell phone, my camera, which he didn't like. So he went and got a different camera. But because of the Asperger's, he learned photography.
Oh, so fast.
It's so fast.
Yeah.
People would see his pictures and they're like, "How long have you been modeling?" I'm like, 6 months. He's been shooting for 6 months.
Yeah.
They're like, "What?"
You're just a good team.
You know, we study. I was raised as an athlete. I was raised in a generation. If you're going to do something, do it well. Do it with all your heart, or don't do it at all. So I was sitting on Instagram studying, you know, he'd study, and then we'd go out for 10 hours, you know, in the pouring rain or super cold Oregon weather, and freeze our asses off and create art. And because of just, I guess, who I am, I started making my own posts of just, I wanted my page to be positive.
Yeah.
I didn't want it to be a typical model, because I didn't feel like a typical model. I had never been told I was pretty my whole life. So I still didn't embody that girl. You know, I didn't embody that woman of, I'm pretty, so I'm going to put my picture out here. I was embodying, I'm healthy. I'm 40. At that time, I was 46 years old. And I want women that are 46 years old that have kids to know that they can have their body still. That's what I wanted them to know. I want them to know it's possible. And it's possible without a gym, and it's possible without eating organic, and it's possible without a coach, and it's, you know, it's possible.
You can do it.
And that's why I started my Instagram. You know, I wanted to motivate people. So my posts became very motivational just because I was pouring out my heart. You know, I'm not going to spend time doing something that's not authentic. I'm just not. Life is too short. So I guess that grabbed some people, and they started telling me, "You should be a life coach." And I was like, "Oh, it's fun, cool." So when you explain it like this, they're like, "A life coach is like being a mom to adults." I'm like, "Oh, damn, I can do that."
Easy done, eh? Teacher, you can teach them stuff. That's perfect. Yeah.
So and that kind of took off Phoenix Rising, and I was like, you know what? I started sort of sharing my story here and there on podcasts, and you know, I got an article because when I was fired from the school, I actually had a newspaper write an article on me, and that sort of started it. And I've always held to the fact that if we go through life and we have things that go wrong for us, if we share them, we're saving somebody else from making the same mistake. And then it's no longer a mistake, it's a lesson. You know, so that's kind of where I'm at in putting up posts on Facebook, Instagram, wherever. I want to share life with people. I want to help them. I want them to see that they're worthy. So many people don't see they're worthy. And I know that I lived most of my life not seeing I was worthy. So the modeling is, it's an expression of absolute gratitude for what I've been given and, in a sense, gone through. And hopefully, I hope other people can grow from it and learn from it.
That's awesome. Very cool and very inspirational. I think a lot of people are going through that same stuff, right? Where they've just been through some hard times, or they've been through things that most people nobody should have to go through. But at the same time, there's hope on the other end too, right? There's a brighter day ahead, right? There is.
So, there is. And I think that was, you know, the pandemic really hurt a lot of people. And now that I'm trauma informed certified, I had something else happen to me when I started dating. And so that kind of reared its ugly head. And all of a sudden I was like, trauma. Oh, I thought trauma was for PTSD and for military. And so many people they're hurting. That pandemic was kind of the last straw.
Yep. I heard it recently, and I've probably repeated this a few times on this podcast, but they said, you know, maybe like mental health and going through stuff, you know, we're always worried, are you drowning in the bathtub, or are you drowning in the pool, or are you drowning in the lake? But maybe stop worrying about why people are drowning and just focus on the fact that somebody's drowning, right? You know, and that's a huge piece.
Yes, no, it's a huge piece. And I think if we can make the word trauma not so trivial and not so scary every day, then we can start addressing that mental health, because mental health isn't this huge, you know, lock those people up in a ward. Mental health is something that we all deal with. Literally 100% of humanity deals with mental health every day on our own level. And the more we embrace that and share that so that people don't have to feel like they're less than, the
Yes.
better off our society will be.
So people in your coaching program that you've worked with, how much of an effect have you seen the physical lifting weights, working out, how does that translate to the mental piece as well? Is that hand in hand, or do you really see people do better once they start working out, or is it vice versa?
That's a really good question. It's interesting because I think since most of my clients have come to me from my Instagram, they sort of will say, hey, I've been following you for a while. I love your inspiration. So then what I have to say mentally, they oftentimes are like, yeah, I wrapped my brain around that 6 months ago. That's why I came to you. So it's been really cool. It's all hand in hand. When I say I train your mind, body, and soul, and I just added that last piece of the soul when I went through trauma training,
Right.
it's true. I say the things like this. I can get anybody fit. I can get you fit in your body. No problem. I have no problem with that. I can do it in a way that you won't like, or I can do it in a way that you will like a little bit more, and
Right.
it will take a little bit longer. How much time do you have, and how healthy do you want to be? But what I can't do is I can't get that person mentally healthy unless they want to. Because I can starve a person, I can give them which I don't do I don't do meal plans like that because I totally don't agree with them. But, a fitness coach can tell someone get on, 1,500 calories and that's
They will lose
it,
weight.
and you're going to lose weight. That's great. You're going to lose weight. Okay. Doesn't mean you're going to be healthier.
No.
But I can't force them to start thinking positively. And I think that's been the most amazing thing. I've had clients that I have taken through the course that I had before. And then I was going through my trauma training the early part of 2023.
Sure.
And so I started implementing it with my clients that I had then. Oh my gosh. It was amazing. It was amazing. I mean, I thought it was a cool program before, but when these people could wrap their brains around the fact that the reason that things weren't happening was because of trauma that we had to identify. And I don't say trauma to scare people and say we have to identify it because I am not a trauma counselor. Those people have a lot more training. But I know a lot about trauma now, and I know how to walk someone through it. Sure. And I know how to say, okay, the reason you're eating at 10 o'clock at night, let's dissect that. What are you feeling at 10 o'clock at night?
Right.
This is stuff that coaches didn't do before. It was like, because I had those coaches, and I'm going to be honest, if I had been a coach earlier, I would have been that coach because I'm sure I did it to my girls where I'm like, so just don't eat.
Yeah. Easy. What's wrong with that, right?
Why are you telling me?
Yeah.
I didn't know I had a very high discipline until I stepped on stage, and people would talk behind stage, and they'd be like, oh my gosh, it took so long to get here, and I continually cheated, and my boyfriend had to do this to me, and I'm sitting here going,
huh?
For real? Like, I wanted to step on stage, so I did it. Like, how is this difficult? So I think that, again, our life is such an amazing journey because then I had something happen to me in December where trauma hit me. I had swept it under the rug. Right. And I had been like, oh, I can deal with it. So basically, I was raped in February. And from my upbringing, it was shove it under the rug. It didn't happen.
That's right.
You're strong enough.
You're strong enough. Move on. Yeah.
And then it was you've had worse people try and hurt you because I've been abused from my family. Yeah. And so why would you let this asshole hurt you?
Right.
So I pushed forward. Well, in December of last year, my body decided, screw you, Wendy. I'm not going to let you just pass through this. And I started to gain inflammation weight.
Oh, wow.
And so I had to research because I'm like, I'm a personal trainer, I'm a nutritionist, and I'm a model. This should not be happening.
Should not happen, yeah.
I know how to do this on paper. And it just wasn't going away. And I was left with, do I pay a trauma-informed coach $12,000 to work with me for 3 months? Or do I pay $12,000 to get a certification so that I can become a trauma-informed coach? And I was like, Wendy, you've always said if something's going to happen in your life, going to use it for everybody else. So that's what happened. And what I have been able to see, and I see my clients completely different now.
Wow.
And it's amazing because I see them with their story of not just struggling with food, but struggling with who they are.
Yeah.
Like we all do. And when we struggle with who we are, food is secondary, and it's not the food that anybody's really struggling with.
No.
It's not. It's so not. We're struggling with ourselves. We're struggling with our relationships. We're struggling with this trauma and stress that is in our bodies that we can't ignore. It's not, our bodies are amazing. And they're like, screw you. I'm not letting you ignore this anymore.
Right.
And it's a defense mechanism of our body. It's there to keep us safe. And when we are ignoring every sign and saying, I'm just going to do this and do this and do this, and put ourselves on the brink of death, our bodies are going to fight back.
Yeah.
So it's been just helping my clients find their purpose. Huge. And that wasn't something I talked about before. It was something that I'd be like, off and on. But if you don't have your purpose, like, what is the point of fitting in size 2 jeans if you're still going to hate yourself in those size 2 jeans?
That's right. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're still going to see that fat girl in the mirror. It's not going to work. And I know this firsthand because I've gone through body dysmorphia after coming off stage.
Sure.
I love my body on stage.
Right.
It's so unhealthy.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what anybody tells you, but all of us may
Looks
look
great.
like gods and goddesses up there, but we are on this close to our deathbed.
Yeah. Yeah. And how much do you have to do to get to that point, right?
Right. And
people think you just wake up that way.
Yeah, you lose your relationships, you lose your friendships, you gain. I don't know anybody on stage that has competed more than twice that doesn't have some sort of eating disorder. And by disorder, I don't necessarily mean bulimia or anorexia. Yeah. I mean, we do not have a good relationship with food.
Sure.
So we will be like, I ate that chocolate cake. Damn it. And beat ourselves up.
Yes.
Or on the other hand, 98%, if not more, competitors are using about $1,200 to $1,600 worth of drugs every month.
Is that right?
And that's what the world doesn't know either. Oh, very much. I was one of very few natural competitors. So it's just not told anymore. Instead, people see these beautiful bodies and they see these people telling them, oh, I've got this workout plan for you, and I've got this fitness nutrition plan for you, and it'll work. But it didn't even work for them.
Yeah.
They're on drugs like crazy to lose the fat.
Zero real results, but
zero real results. Yes. So, people can idolize people on stage all they want, but it's not real. It's smoke and mirrors. And that's probably my biggest thing with the fitness industry. It's all smoke and mirrors. It really is. Except for a few. I'm not going to down those of us like me. It's starting. We're starting to be heard, the people that actually truly want to make people healthy.
Right.
But it's been a moneymaker for far too long.
Well, I think that's kind of a lot of human nature, though, too. Whether it's, if you look at Instagram, social media, those kind of things, like that's the highlight reel of all the good things in people's lives, right? And everybody likes to watch that stuff. They don't want to watch all the crappy days and the down days. We want it easy all the time, right?
We want it easy. Yeah.
What? Not to give away all your coaching program, but for people that are maybe kind of hemming and hawing about getting some help or looking at this sort of stuff, changing their body, what are kind of the first steps that you take people through to, or what can they do today on their own to get started in something like that?
Yes, definitely. Well, first off, I put up stuff in my stories from other amazing coaches all the time.
Cool.
So if you follow me and you look through my stories, I will constantly be putting up stories or feed or posts from coaches I believe in and really respect. So then you can go follow those people and learn for yourself. So that's going to be key. It's following the right people.
Cool.
And then 2, decide your why. Decide why you want to get fit. If you are wanting to get fit for your husband or your kids or your friends, if that reason is anything but yourself, you need to not do that right now. Figure out what you need to make sure your why is about you. Because if your why for getting fit and healthy is not because I want a better life, you're not ready yet. And that's kind of what I tell people. I'm like, if you're doing this for any reason other than you, contact me in another month. Because that dopamine rush that we get when we start something new doesn't stick with a person if it's not buried, but if it's not seated in desire for ourselves. So you've got to get fit for yourself first.
Cool.
So that would be key. And then when I have clients that are like, yes, I want to do this for me, and I'm really dedicated to this, Then I start teaching them the basics about macronutrients. And that's a big word and it gets still thrown around, but there's just a few of them. There's protein, and the average American does not eat enough protein at all. The average protein that you should be eating is 1 gram per pound of body weight. Yes, that much. So I'm 125. I actually eat about 145 because trying to stay lean as a model in my age is and the older we get, we actually need more.
More protein.
So by the time I'm 60, I'm going to need 1.5 grams per body pound.
Interesting.
Because our body just doesn't process it. Yeah. So protein is the leading thing. And that's why everybody wants this, low carb diets are, well, we won't even get into that. We'll skip that. That's going to be a rant.
Be here for a while. Do that next time.
Protein is king. Protein is key. Protein satiates. We're made of meat, right? We're made of meat. I'm not trying to offend any vegetarians listening to this, but we are made of meat. And so we need meat. There are so many amino acids in different kinds of meat that you just can't get in protein. And when I ask somebody who comes to me who's possibly a vegetarian and they're like, do you coach vegetarians? My answer is very honest and very blunt. No, I do not. I have a reason for that. And it is because you are not going to get healthy as a vegetarian. I know there's plenty of so-called healthy people out there, but let's just take some general facts.
Yeah.
When I eat a hamburger, it is 100% beef, one ingredient.
Yeah.
When my client comes to me and says, I'm vegetarian, but I want a hamburger, so I'm going to eat this, they're eating 33 man-made chemicals. I can't combat that.
Right.
Because what's in those man-made chemicals are obesogens and hormone blockers.
Right.
And the older a person gets, our hormones are deteriorating. Our HGH starts declining at age 30. And when our HGH declines, that's the main hormone that helps other hormones talk to each other. So it's like playing the game of phone when we were little kids. Well, at least when I was a little kid.
Sure.
And you'd say something in someone's ear and it would go down the line, right?
Yes,
and by the time you're at the last one, it's something very different from what you were saying. So that's our hormones. They are supposed to talk very well so that 10 hormones down the line, it's saying the same thing. The older we get and the more of this crap we put into our body, the worse they work.
Right.
And so if somebody's going to come to me and say, well, I'm a vegetarian, I can't put a lot of protein in my body. And if I do, it has to be plant protein. And there are some plant proteins that if you mix them well enough, you're going to get a good mix. So there are ways to do vegetarian healthy. There really are. They're just very expensive. They're very time consuming. And you have to be willing to not have what most people want, which are fast foods. Right. Because people don't want to take the time to make their food at home. So for all those vegetarians out there that are mad at me, you can do it well and right if you take the time to eat from scratch, 100%. Yeah. Because you can't have the things that are made in a store because it's not real. It's not real.
Right.
It's fake. Whereas I can tell someone, go have a taco, go heat up some hamburger meat. 3 minutes later, they're sitting down eating it, and it's one ingredient.
That's right.
So it's a lot more time consuming. I just am honest with people because I don't want to get stuck being told that I don't know what I'm doing because they weren't willing to not eat certain things. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And I don't want to be just one more coach that they failed with. Because here's the thing, the system is set up to cause people to fail. It really is. The fitness and nutrition industry is set up so that you fail, so that you buy the next, and you buy the next, and you buy the next. Because if they allowed you to succeed, they wouldn't get your money.
Yeah, no dollars.
Yep. Exactly. So I take my teaching background, and I'm like, I don't want to present you with a fish. I want to teach you how to fish.
Yep.
So I definitely lose my clients, but in a good way, because I've taught them so they know how to do it themselves. And that's why, so basically the why, they need to have the why be about them. I teach them basic macros. So the first one we start with is protein. Protein is king. Have enough protein, 1 gram per body pound. Start with that. You can do protein shakes, egg whites, eggs, meat, fish. And the first thing everybody gets hung up at is, well, what's the good protein? And I'm like, the good protein is the protein you are willing to eat. Oh. And that's the bottom line. We get again, this is the fitness industry, is magazines and articles for working out or nutrition are written by your elite 1% of the population.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so are there things that I should be eating and that I should be training in the gym to step on stage? Yes. Am I going to share any of that with my clients? No. Because to get to the point where you need to know what kind of protein is better and what kind of carb timing is good for muscles, and is there an anabolic window, and is there a good recovery rate, you are so far past the basics. 95% of the American population don't even have the basics down. And those basics are protein, decent carbs, and by decent carbs, I mean real whole food carbs, not processed, not in packaging. So that's the second step that I walk them through. Was we're like, let's talk about your carbs. Oh, carbs are bad, of course, because we're on the low carb diet hit, right? Yes. Before it was the no fat, now we're low carb. Yeah. And I'm like, well, guess what? Muscles are made of carbs. So if you don't eat carbs, you're not going to have the muscles.
Right.
Protein helps build the muscles. Carbs allows you to have energy to go through that workout so that you can do the workout to rip those proteins apart so that you can then build them. Okay, so you need carbs. Carbs are your friend. And carbs that are good are going to be rice, potatoes, not French fries, potatoes.
Shoot.
Fruits and vegetables. It's summertime. You can't get any better than fruits. Whole grain. And people just don't want, they hear this, oh, but I've got to be on a low carb diet. Well, it's funny because when I go with my clients, I'm like, okay, well, what's a low carb diet to you? They're like, oh, maybe about 200 grams of carbs. Okay. That's actually not a low carb diet. A low carb diet is about 50 to 75 carbs, which most people would be dying on. That's what we do maybe 2 weeks before stage. Right. That's a low carb. The problem with American diet is that most people are on a super inflated carb diet. So if they just back down to what's actually required or recommended, then they're going to be fine. So your average American, sitting under 200 grams of carbs, if you're not active at all, you're going to be fine. Women, about 150. As soon as you start to get active, you're going to need to increase that depending on, and there's so much that comes into that. So don't anybody quote me on that number because age and height and weight and so much that that's what a coach will work with. Yep. And then, what kind of things do you have going on in your life, like stress, things like that. So there's so much that goes into that building of what's right for a client, but carbs are not evil. As long as you're not eating potato chips and crackers, anything that comes in a box. So we kind of go over that, and I kind of show them, in the grocery store, don't go down the aisles, go on the outside of the store, because the outside of the store is going to be your natural stuff, your foods that are meats and dairies and bakery breads, which honestly are better than your packaged bread, right? Sure. Because they don't have all those shelf fillers in there and shelf stabilizers. So that's kind of what we do. And then we talk about fats. And fats are, again, one of those words that freaks people out. But healthy fats are actually the building blocks for your hormones. If you are not eating healthy fats, your hormones, again, can't talk to each other. And then especially the older we get, and especially women. So men do better on a high carb diet. Women do better on a high fat diet. And I'm not talking keto. That's not what I'm talking. But those fats are the building blocks for our hormones. And so we kind of go through that. So yeah, if you're trying to start and you don't want to know if you want to hire a coach or something, figure out your why. Why do you want to get fit? Make sure it's about you. And then make sure you start eating protein that's going to help you stay satiated, build your muscles, eat carbs that are healthy. Fruits in season right now, go enjoy that fruit salad. I see so many women, when I used to work at a winery, they would come in and they would have their salad, right? Oh, I can't, no protein in it. And then they douse it with salad dressing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, just go have a hamburger.
All the same.
So eat real food. And I think the thing that then I would start to get into, the next thing is make sure that mentally you're eating food as energy. Right. We seem to think that food is just for taste and, oh, I've got it. This tastes so great. Okay, that's an aspect of it, but it's energy. And as soon as we wrap our brain around that, we start to change what we put in our bodies, because that packaged Twinkie is not providing you with energy. But that amazing cantaloupe, yes. And you know what? They both taste, well, don't ask me what you think a Twinkie tastes like.
Cantaloupe's pretty good, put it that way.
I'll take the bowl of fruit though.
Sure.
Yeah, I hope that helps. I mean, go ahead and ask another if you.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think it gives people some kind of clarity of what, and a little bit of explanation of maybe where you can help them too if they're trying to figure out some of those things. That's why you talk to Wendy and be like, hey, I don't know where to figure this thing out. I was on keto, but apparently not. Right?
Get off right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I just added one-time calls because I've had a lot of people say, you know what, I think I have this figured out. I don't want a whole coaching program, but I would just like to sit and pick your brain for 2 hours. I'm like, okay. So I offer those too.
Cool. That's awesome. And I think somebody will take advantage of that for sure. So back to you and just your, I guess, life in general and that sort of thing. Do you have any, besides the fitness, nutrition pieces of all that you do, what about other areas of mental sort of awareness or increased exercise mentally? What are some things you do that way?
Yeah. So I'm not a yoga person yet, but I know I need to add that.
You bought the yoga mat?
I have a yoga mat.
You're set.
I got so bored trying yoga, but I think I'm to the point where I think it wasn't that I was bored. I honestly couldn't control all of my thoughts. And now that I've done some meditation and I know how to meditate and I incorporate that in my day every day, I'm ready to add that yoga into it. Because before my brain was going and I wasn't appreciating the yoga for what it was.
Right.
So yeah, yoga will definitely be, but I dance. I love dancing. I just picked up dancing in December, which was funny because 2 of my girls were dancers. And I remember thinking, I still want to dance. And this is my, she's going to hate me for this. My oldest was like, Mom, you'll make a terrible dancer. You're too much of an athlete.
Thanks.
Innocence of children. I don't know that she'd agree with that now but yeah, I added Latin dancing. And then that led to country dancing, which now my favorite is country swing. Because swing is so fun. And it's funny because I'll dance with these guys and they're just like, hold on, my cat wants to join us. Let me put it down. I'll dance with these guys and they'll be like, yeah, you are very athletic. This is going to be super easy. And I'm like, yeah, see, my athleticism is a good thing. Because when you're trying to throw a girl over your head and she needs to do a handstand, you kind of need to know what you're doing.
That's right, yeah.
So that's been a lot of fun. And, I've really learned, I was very much in my masculine for so much of my life. When you are a survivor of trauma as a girl, you can't trust the masculine. You can't trust them to support you or be there for you. And so I was constantly in my masculine. And that's been a journey for me as well this past year, is learning to be in my feminine. And I am loving it. It's funny because when I found out I was pregnant with my first child and she was a girl, I literally went into a depression. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't have a girl. I can't.
I don't want to deal with this again.
They backstab, they want this and that. And I'm like, I was a tomboy. If we had a problem, we punched each other, we were done with it, right?
Yeah.
And then my husband at the time, he's like, Wendy, you do realize you get to raise them. And I was like,
maybe we'll keep the punching.
Yeah, so then by the time I had my third daughter, I was like, I want another one.
There you go.
Yeah, but that's kind of I share all that because it's kind of the irony of our journey, right? I mean, here I am, this tomboy, and God, the universe gives me 3 beautiful girls, and they're all so different and amazing and wonderful.
Yeah.
And it's really helped me to learn to be much more in my feminine, and dancing is a huge part of that. To move your body, I used to just think it was moving it in a physical way as far as a sport. And that is very different than in a sensual way of dancing. And so that's been a huge thing for me. I've loved it. If anybody needs to move their body, go dance. It's amazing because that energy too, now that I know all about trauma and stuff, we keep that trauma in our body and it's energy and it needs its way out. And oftentimes sports just don't do that. Yoga does, which is why I know I need to add that. And any kind of dancing does. So dancing is a big part of my life now. Yeah, just trying to, I guess, embrace more of the here and now. I was always very goal oriented. And again, another thing that I learned with the trauma course was that when we're goal oriented, which so many of us are, we oftentimes don't pat ourselves on the back when we accomplish that goal.
Mm.
You know, there are the people that are goal oriented and they, you know, they have a few, and when they achieve that goal, they throw a party, right? But
Yeah.
I'd say the majority of us high functioning adults are ones where we have goal upon goal upon goal. And when we finish that goal, we don't acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Because why?
It's not the next one.
Our eyes are on the next goal. I mean, I was standing on stage September of 2021, won my all-around medal or all-around trophy of this big, beautiful eagle. I'd wanted it for 3 years. I had wanted this.
Sure.
And I'm standing there on the stage holding this thing that I had worked my ass off for 3 years. And what was the first thought in my brain? The first thought in my brain was, if more people had showed up, I probably wouldn't have won this. I better try harder.
Wow.
Holy shit.
So hard on yourself. Yeah.
It's we don't congratulate. And you know what that does to our body is it continues to feel unsafe.
Yep.
It continues to feel in that trauma. And so, you know, I'm trying now to realize when I accomplish those goals, and I'm trying to make them smaller so that my body gets that dopamine hit every so often, and I can get better at congratulating myself for, check, you just did a live on Instagram. Good job. You know,
Exactly.
and those may have seemed small before, but they're huge. And they tell our body that we can trust ourselves, you know, that we're worthy of being this person that we claim we are. And yeah, that's been a huge,
awesome.
Huge thing too.
How do people get a hold of you if they're listening to the podcast?
Yeah. Okay. So don't have a podcast yet. That is coming.
Cool.
But Wendy Lynn Myers is my main coaching page.
Okay.
And Wendy Lynn is my Facebook. They wouldn't let me have both. And Twitter and TikTok are Wendy Lynn Myers as well. It's all one word. And
is there dancing on TikTok?
Do what?
Is there some dancing on TikTok?
There's not. Yeah, I don't. You know, it's funny because everyone thinks that since I'm a model, I carry my phone around with me to take pictures of myself all the time. But when I'm at, you know, dancing, because also with other people, and there might be sooner or later. But yeah, so TikTok, I don't know where else. Oh, and then my website is Phoenix Rising Fitness, phoenixrising.fitness. And that's where they can kind of look through stuff and take a questionnaire and get in touch with me. But really, anywhere you reach out to me, if you just say Phoenix, I'll know that you want training.
Cool.
Or you can just say, I want training, you know, if you don't remember the Phoenix.
Yep.
Yeah, and I will get back to you. And I run all of my own social media, so it's not somebody else reaching out to you. It's 100% me.
That's the best part. Yeah.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Cool. Right on. Well, we do appreciate you sharing your time and all your expertise. I think there's a lot of good tips. People will be going back and listening again because so many good things with fitness and nutrition, and and hopefully somebody takes some opportunity to join you in your programs. I think those are be worth a lot, knowing the things that you've been through. So thank you, Wendy, for joining us, and good luck down the road. We'll look forward to seeing more of your modeling success and more of your coaching success, and come back sometime. We'll share again. So.
No, that would be fun. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
Right on. Cool.
Appreciate it.
Take care for tonight.
Okay.